All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, like I said, I'm loving the lovely weather that we've been having, but the bending over, just scooting around all over, taking 10,000 steps just to get my yard to some sense of springtime. I have a full assessment of my fitness, and the assessment is not pretty.
Not good.
And I know you your fair share of yard work too, but you've also been running consistently at the same time. So I'm just wondering if, your body told you what age you were, like my body told me what age I was. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, no, a couple of weeks ago I did a long run-ish, like 10 miles or something, and then the next day I spent like several hours in the yard cleaning out my raspberry bushes, and so it was a lot of bending over, sitting down, getting up, moving. And then the next day I was in so much pain. I was like, how would a run do this to me? Like, I've been running frequently. Why would this mess up my legs? It took me the whole day to realize that it wasn't the run that created all the soreness. It was the working in the backyard. So apparently my brain muscle was not on full gear on that day. But yeah, it's not it's not movement. You do a lot. So then
Exactly. The twisting and turning and the bending over and picking up and oh my goodness. I mean, even the boys, they're 15 and about to turn 12, and both of them looked at me like, this lady, what's wrong with her? We're fine. Like, youth wins every single time. Youth wins. And they were perfectly fine. I'm like, of course y'all are. I mean, of course you are. So meanwhile, I'm like tipping through the house all day, the next 24 hours. Thank goodness I didn't have anywhere to go. But yeah, got really interesting. So you all listeners, once you get to that point where you're so sore and you feel so out of shape, you're like, am I going to make it to the bathroom or not in time? Like, that's what it's seriously. So it's serious. It's like, let me start ahead of time. Like when I think I might need to go.
Give yourself a head start. Yeah, I love it.
Head start. All right. Well, with that being said, and I'm still sore, but it's all good. Let's get into the word of the week.
Okay, so this one comes from this book that I'm reading that I'm going to talk about in the second phase, but it's a book by Amanda Montell. It's 2021. It's called Cultish, and it's all about language, so you will love it. But there's two terms for the same thing. So it's thought terminating cliché or semantic stop signs. And she's obviously talking about this in the context of cults and multi-level or layer marketing, like Amway and stuff like that, and various other cult-ish organizations. And so these are words or terms that get used. They're short, they're catchy, and they're intended to stop us from thinking. So it's intended to just shut us down, because if we are not shut down, then we might start to critically think about the thing that we're being asked to do and have second thoughts, right? So examples of these thought terminating cliches are things like everything happens for a reason, act as if, just trust the process, and one that is very well used now, fake news, right? So if our delightful president doesn't like a piece of news or a poll, then it's fake news. It's a bad poll. It's done by raving lunatic liberals, right? And they're all linguistically intended to stop anyone who hears it from going further down that avenue to kind of better understand, right? So I've understood these phrases, but I'd not heard that terminology, thought terminating cliche or semantic stop sign, before. So I'm wondering how it lands on you, whether it resonates with you, Shauna.
Love this, because the first thing I thought about, it kind of reminded me to go back to our episode on the phrase spiritual bypassing. Usually when I think of cult, I immediately think of religion, obviously. And so with that, thinking about how spiritual bypassing shows up in a very similar way, in that let's use something that sounds aligned with our values, but it's used in a very manipulative way.
Mm-hmm.
We can see that in a lot of different places, but one of the phrases that I think about all the time. So, Lisa, for you, as far as how worship services are set up, and for anyone that may not be raised or acclimated to a church environment, there's a portion of the service where people will make their donation, if you will. It is usually called both a tithe and an offering. There are two different things. A tithe is usually about a tenth of your income, your revenue, what have you, and an offering is above and beyond that for something specific. So I might give a tenth of my income, but then us being educators, Lisa, you and I might give an extra $20 to a teacher relief fund for what have you. That would be the difference between a tithe and an offering. And I remember, now, mind you, my grandfather was the deacon of, and the chair of the deacon board at my church for over 30 plus years. And every Sunday he would make the petition for tithes and offerings. And one of his favorite sayings was, "Would a man rob God?" Right? Now that is a actual scripture in Malachi. However, there needs to be ethical use of phrases such as that, because if it's connected to really strong teaching on tithes and offerings and how it shows up in scripture, it's part of a larger understanding of sharing resources. That's one thing. If you just going up there talking about "would a man rob God" to guilt people into giving their last 5 cents when they have nothing, now we have a different conversation, and it's a thought terminating cliche to say, "Would a man rob God?" So you don't think about what your own needs are, or your kids are sitting beside you and so they have a need, but you're giving that to your house of worship anyway. There are many of them that I would suggest within religion and otherwise that would qualify as what this sounds like, as a thought terminating cliche. Many of them, like when God forbid something happens to someone, they pass away or they're murdered or what have you, and someone will say, well, right place, wrong place at the right time, or God knows what he's doing, or something very quick and I always call them those quick and dirty phrases. You're like, I don't know about that. Like a thinking person will be like, no, that's not appropriate. That's not okay.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason.
Oh gosh, yeah. There's so many of them that qualify for this, so I love this.
Yeah, and I just, for me, it clicked, right? I was like, oh, well, if someone I look up to or I think is a role model or is important to me says something like that, then I just go, oh, okay, right?
For sure. Like, Lisa, we've talked about this before in our previous, higher education spaces, where someone will throw out, oh, well, you're not being student centered. And then you stop talking about what you need or what you desire. Like, that's a thought terminating cliche.
It's exactly right. Yep.
In our field.
Yep.
Or another one that I've been thinking through, Lisa, is in nonprofit spaces is we're a mission driven organization. And I'm like, yeah, every organization is driven to some mission, but which one are you talking about? You're making the assumption that is a ethical, positive, benevolent mission when it may not be.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the worst businesses with the worst ethics of all time, and they still have a mission that is driving them. So these types of thought terminating phrases, cliches, they're all over the place.
They really are.
And they're convenient. They're convenient too.
Yep. And politicians use them all the time. And I get, so start watching out for them, is what I would say.
I can't unhear it or unsee it now because it's just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a good one. I think half of the phrases that I ever learned as a child in scripture probably would qualify as this as a standalone without thinking it through as part of your overall faith and structure.
Yeah.
I got a whole lot of them to go with. So, all right, that was a good one. Let's get into phase one. All right, Lisa. So I have been laughing all weekend. And let me tell you why I've been laughing. So I'm going to put a few dots together for those that are longer term listeners of this podcast, because we have a number of episodes that probably connect to one another. So I pulled up social media. I forget what day it was, couple of days prior to us having this conversation. And one of my favorite comedians, he does these little videos and snippets online on his Instagram account. And his name is Druski. And so that's his stage name, if you will. And it's been a while since he did a really strong, funny video that was of a longer take, a few minutes. Okay. And it was satirical in nature, in that it was making fun of mega churches and mega pastors, right? Okay. And so with that, I mean, they've got him like almost like Cirque du Soleil, where they're like dropping him from the sky, and he's floating all over, and all that. And it was the funniest thing ever, because I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you don't even have to hear what he's saying. You could just watch the video and know that he's making fun of mega church pastors and congregations and so forth, and how theatrical church has become in places and spaces.
Yeah.
So fast forward to the most recent one. Let me tell you something. The makeup artist for Druski is the real MVP in this, right? I watched about 7-minute video where he specifically says that he is making fun of white women conservatives, right? Okay. White women conservatives. He comes out, long flowing blonde hair, like down his back, blue-eyed, I call it the uniform, the white suit with the black shirt underneath and the crucifix necklace on, right?
Okay, yeah.
And sparklers going on beside him, and he's doing all the hand gestures, about to make a statement to a crowd, right? Now, this is so funny. I can't even count how many times I've watched it now, right? And so after I'd watched it about 5 times, I mean, it's almost creepily, that's how much I've watched it, because it was so stinking hilarious, right? After about 5 times, I start seeing posts from people that are saying, you need to stop mocking Erica Kirk. You need to stop making fun of, you need to stop. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, record scratch. I watched it 5 times and I never heard her name once in the 7+ minute video. Now, any thinking person is probably putting 2 and 2 together, but he didn't explicitly say that, nor was it in the caption of the video. And even as I listened to it more than once and watched it more than once, again, like I mentioned before, the makeup artist is the real MVP, because when you see the side by side,
oh, really?
It's impeccable, right? All right. So fast forward and we start seeing, she's upset by it. She's petitioned to have it taken down, all these other things. And some things are going viral that I won't get into each and every response post. Some of them are real, some of them are not. Even Druski has said some are real and some are not. But the point being that there's been conversation around people who witnessed it, commenters, depending on their political leaning, that are saying, this is despicable. You're making fun of a widow. How would you feel, people of color, if we put on quote unquote whiteface? This is whiteface. So how would you feel if we put on blackface? And Druski has over 12 million followers. So all of them are not going to fall on the same side of the political spectrum. Right. Even some of them who do fall on the same side of the political spectrum will still say, wait a minute, this is a bit too far. People have done this with Dave Chappelle and many other comedians that lean towards satire and the intersection with politics. And so, Lisa, I know you have not seen the video, which that's what makes this conversation even more juicy to me, because you don't have to have seen the video to have a take on comedy, politics, whiteface, blackface, previously you and I talked about policing grief. All of that comes together in this video. So I can't say that it's not funny to me personally. However, at the same time, I feel that this is an interesting commentary on continuing to try to police yet another form of Black art and Black joy, in my opinion. I can go on for days on that, but I want to stop here and hear what you think, given limited information here.
Yeah, well, I just looked it up on my phone, so I will watch it. But
yes.
I guess I don't know really what it has to do with her being a widow. You know, like, this isn't okay. Like, it's not. That seems like a misnomer or something. Like, surely. So if she wasn't a widow, you'd be okay with it, right? Like, so. What are your principles, right? Are you are you just saying that it's inappropriate for you to make fun of someone who is different than you? Okay, but her widow's I don't see what her widow's status has to do with any of this, honestly. And then I do think it raises some interesting points around what does it mean to perform as an artist, perform in a way that is either not your gender, not your race. Like, you know, like, I think it raises some interesting questions. I don't think him being made up to look like a white person is the same at all as blackface, because it doesn't have that long historical, violent, malicious history, you know? And so I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I don't give much thought to Erica Kirk on a day-to-day basis.
Me either. Not until this came up. Exactly.
So from people that you trust, that you don't think are just trolls, what are the two like loudest, most cogent arguments you've heard for what this comedian did and against what the comedian did?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for, which is the easiest just because they're most aligned with my life perspective and political perspective, is that we have so many heavy things going on right now. We'll take comedy in many forms. Like, we need some levity. We need to stand back and laugh at our situations. We need the point of levity because life is so heavy. And so imagine that literally the only thing that I can afford as far as my own entertainment and joy is a free account on Instagram watching a comedian do his thing. I'm going to take what I can get. So the levity that's needed in the moment currently. Another in support of is this being entertainment, but also at the same time, some of her questionable behaviors that would not fit into the stereotype of grieving that align. So being on a lot of stages and continuing to be almost an entertainer to promote the organization that will go unnamed on this podcast. So that alignment of entertainment has kind of been another piece to say, well, wait a minute. She can quote unquote entertain certain audiences. So why can't we entertain certain audiences as well? So that's kind of the for camp. The against camp is, oh my God, why are we not sensitive to someone who is a widow, a grieving widow? Okay, that lays in there a bunch of stereotypes that we've talked about before around how one should grieve and kind of forcing anyone into one form of grief. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, of course, is it's kind of that tit for tat situation of the blackface versus whiteface. It's perceived as the same or equal to blackface, and therefore it's it's an interesting dichotomy. Like, you can tell immediately the people that don't know the history of blackface because they assume that it's the equivalent to what Druski did. And so that's the other argument is, okay, well, if you hit us, we're going to hit you back equally, when they don't realize that it's not an equal hit. And so that would be another person or another avatar in the don't do it camp. I think what's most interesting, one of the quotes that I saw that was most articulate about how this is going down is that, isn't it interesting that the politically conservative camps are really angry that people are treating them the way they have treated others?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the pro camp. That if I had to pick a argument as to, hey, you're free to do what you want to do, Druski, would be that one. Is that, oh, interesting how the hypocrisy of even humor doesn't strike a chord. And the freedom to do so. So yeah, that's how I would kind of narrow down to answer your question, which is a tough question, but a good one. That's how I've seen those two camps, even with people that I trust and care about. Those are the two.
Yeah, because trolls just are stirring shit up for the sake of it, right? But like,
yeah, that's right.
Thinking about it thoughtfully.
Yeah.
I just it's fascinating, right? Because humor is such a tool to point out hypocrisy and to point out problems with the status quo, and that is certainly not a new use of humor.
That's right.
And also conservatives, whether they are religious or not, certainly this is not the first time someone has poked fun at them through a skit. I mean, it's not new, right? So, yeah, it does seem a bit snowflakey, to use their term. But yeah, so for me, the widow thing is less of an issue than what does it mean to take on the role of someone who is of a different racial or ethnic identity as you, and knowing the history, knowing that it's not the same as blackface. I still think there is potential for dialogue there about what does that mean,
right, exactly. Well, and I think if I had to double down or triple down on anything, is that, again, in addition to the long-standing history around blackface that people don't understand, there's also a long-standing history around folks that don't understand the policing of everything Black.
Right.
I mean, the literal policing of everything Black. The fact that you could be beaten and flogged because you were enslaved and you laughed at anything. And now, with the majority of Druski's audience being African American and or liberal, now you want to police it? Like, come on. Because here's the thing. We are not far from, how many weeks ago was it, Lisa, where the only Black president of this country and his wife were depicted in a way that would not be appropriate for anyone, and folks of the very same camp were saying, oh, it's just a joke, it's no big deal. Again, you're upset because you are now being treated the same way you have treated others. This is the definition of hypocrisy. And there's so many different things. Here we go again with our critical thinking tirade, Lisa, is that understanding critical thinking on so many levels, understanding the difference between blackface and whiteface, understanding the history of humor in and of itself, especially Black comedies. That's another conversation. And then understanding what satire is, that it's supposed to use humor as this tool to completely exaggerate something that has really happened, or an experience or characteristics of someone that's being exaggerated. That's the whole point of it.
Right.
And it's supposed to be used in a way that if you didn't already see the flaws or the challenges with the individual or their characteristics, that we're going to exaggerate them so that you can't help but see them. And so with that, it's like, oh, y'all don't understand satire either. No wonder when, you go see a comedian and some people get it and other people don't, and it falls along racial lines. Maybe you don't get the humor because it's rare that you're ever made fun of. But for people that are used to being made fun of, we see it clearly. I mean, maybe it's just as simple as that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think satire is also a particular style of humor that can easily be missed by less savvy consumers, right? Although I'm now thinking
Mm-hmm.
about these cliche, thought-stopping cliches, and I'm thinking about it's just a joke. Or, come on, Shauna, you don't get it,
Mm-hmm.
it's satire, right? And the way
Right.
that we shut down people's feelings by saying, I mean, how many times have white people excused their behavior by saying, it's just a joke? Don't think
Yeah.
critically about this.
Well, it's always just a joke when you're rarely ever the butt of it. I
Yeah.
mean that's it's just a joke then. It's like, what is it? You can dish it out, but you can't take it. I mean, that's what this all really feels like to me. So, I'm there's been a few things floating around saying that uh, she had a cease and desist on him and this whole video situation. And I'm like, if that is true, you don't understand art or free speech.
Well, it's free
Like even
speech. Yeah.
exactly, like even if you and that's the other big point too, for even the people that think it's tasteless or classless or whatever. I've even seen the commentaries that said, yeah, I think it's tasteless and I think it's classless. However, I am firmly in support of him being able to do what he wants to do, and I can simply scroll on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's another perspective that wasn't in the two camps that you asked about that also is important.
Yeah.
There are certain things that I think comedians, I'm like, that's not my style of comedy, but I firmly will fight for your right to be able to share your art. I just don't have to listen
Yes.
to it.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's a really valid point, right? I mean, if we've talked about free speech before, and we're definitely in a moment where it's free speech for me and not for thee. And
There you go.
so, but free speech
Mm-hmm.
is free speech. It's everything. It's the whole caboodle, right?
There you
Like,
go.
it's the
There
stuff
you
you like,
go.
it's the stuff you hate. If you are truly a free speech advocate. But we know that most individuals on the left and the right who talk about free speech aren't really I mean, and I think I have limits too, but I think I've moved more into the okay, if we have free speech, then all speech, including diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
and that's the whole thing, having to hold all of it at once. I mean, there are certain things like, for example, everybody on the planet knows that Dave Chappelle is my ultimate favorite comedian. And at the same time, that I know he has some extremely troubling perspectives on our trans siblings that I don't care for. I have to hold that tension both
Yeah.
and at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And if I don't want, or if I hear, ahead of time, oh, he's going to address this or what have you, I have the option to completely avoid that stand up because I don't want to hear that part.
Yeah.
I have that choice. If Lisa, if you hate opera, then you don't have to go listen to opera. If I hate rap, I don't have to go listen to rap. There is a
Yeah.
choice, but we don't get to silence either one of them.
Right.
That's the part I think is not okay for me. So yeah, and we know how it goes. The more it's critiqued, the louder people will laugh.
Yeah. Well,
It
the more
draws
people will go
attention.
watch it. Yeah, because I wouldn't
There
have.
you go.
No, I will go watch it now. Yeah, and so that's what they call the Barbara Streisand effect. That when because she I
Oh,
guess
really?
yeah, like something happened related to her and some bad press, and so
Uh,
she tried to suppress it, I think, and in so doing, it like exploded. And so it became known as the Barbara Streisand effect, that when you try to quieten something down or you don't want people to know, it just has this habit of then getting 4 times as big. So it's better just
love it.
ignore it rather than actively try to stop it. Yeah.
Love it. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. All right. Well, look, I got lots of new words today. I need to mull around. That's cool. But yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It's just made it worse. Like
Right.
the man had 1 million views within the first hour, Lisa. The
Yeah, I mean
first hour.
that's insane. Yeah.
So it probably was the Barbara Streisand effect. So anyway, all right. So the lesson learned here is think about free speech here, y'all. Think about it. What does it mean in both directions, not just the direction that you don't like?
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's think about that. So, All right, take us into phase two.
Okay, so shocker, I have another grab bag, but in my head, Shauna, they all connect together. So this is where you get a look inside Lisa's brain. How on earth does she make these connections? So the other week, there was a documentary that aired on PBS. It wasn't, I think it was a 2024 or 2025 documentary, and it was called White with Fear. It's 90 minutes, and it basically traces the rise, or the explicit rise, of white people's fear of being dethroned, shall we say. This idea that they are going to be a minority racial group in the United States and will not hold the same levels of power that they do, and this conscious and in some cases unconscious fear, has permeated US politics since, well, it's always been there, but it really went on steroids with Nixon. And he had the Southern strategy for folks where he was explicitly preying on white people's fear of African Americans in particular, but brown people more broadly. And so it kind of interviews all these different people about how the GOP, so the Republican Party, has just gotten more and more curdled into this party of white resentment and white grievance, and where Nixon and Reagan might use dog whistles like welfare queen, right, or law and order, meaning they're actually saying something that they're not explicitly saying. Now the Republican Party just has whistles, right? Like, they're not even necessarily trying to hide the racism and the racial grievance. And it was really interesting. They interviewed a lot of white people who are no longer in the Republican Party, and how they traced this trajectory, and at what point for them they decided this is not the place for me anymore. So it was really interesting, but that language piece is what really got me, Shauna, because of the ways in which language has been used since the 1960s, kind of in modern American politics, to create opportunities for the Republican Party to coalesce around this great replacement theory that used to be much more fringy and is now more mainstream, right? And the way that has now manifested itself. So it was super interesting. Anyway, so I watched that documentary, and then the next day I read that there was a declaration at the United Nations that slavery, or the transatlantic slave trade, or however you want to refer to it, I don't know how they actually refer to it, is actually a crime against humanity. So it's this document, this declaration. It doesn't have a force of law, but it was just basically recognizing, finally, that all of the people who were enslaved from the African continent and other Caribbean nations and brought over to various countries for chattel slavery, and the, hundreds of thousands of people who lost their lives, millions maybe. And so, because it's a UN declaration, they had to vote on it. Okay, gold star, Shauna. What do you think the United States did in this vote?
Who is the contrarian of the whole planet? The United States. I'm sure we did not vote in support of this because it would require acknowledgement of said slavery.
Yes. So,
I'm not surprised.
It was overwhelmingly backed, so 123 voted for it. Mm-hmm. 3 countries did not, and that was the United States, Argentina, and Israel. Quite the motley crew. And then there were also 52 countries that abstained, and the United Kingdom and the EU abstained. And so I think, while it's not a direct no vote, it's curious to me, given particularly the United Kingdom and other European countries, given their role in kidnapping and forcibly removing people from African countries and shipping them to the United States. how they abstained from it. But it wasn't a no, so it's still not great. But the US actually came out with an NO, right? One of 3 countries to vote no.
Damn, and so, shame. Oh my God.
So I'm watching this documentary around the rise of the Republican Party, and it's kind of dog whistles and how the language around race and racial resentment for white people is really like coalesced, and now we have this huge angry white group of people who are voting for the current president and people like him. And then the next day I'm like, oh, and the United States just voted no on this declaration acknowledging that slavery is a crime against humanity. And obviously the declaration is language written down, right? It's symbolic. It's another way that language is being used to make a statement, to say this isn't okay and we're finally acknowledging it. And the US is like, peace out, no thank you. So right on the heels of voting against the one for women the other week.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's not funny. Like, it's just absolutely...
It's... Well, here's the thing. Okay, so let's use our critical thinking skills here. Okay, so I love that we have the language for it. The United Nations General Assembly this week overwhelmingly backed a resolution declaring the transatlantic slave trade, quote, the gravest crime against humanity. So let's break that down. I feel like you remember back when you were in elementary school and you diagram a sentence? Like, I don't know if y'all did, okay, but we did it here. So diagramming that sentence, okay, so this fool that we have running this country might say either, oh, it wasn't a crime against humanity, it was economics. Or, yeah, it was a crime, but it wasn't the gravest crime. Like, there's got to be something else worse than slavery. Or, oh, but those people, they weren't humans. They were property. They were inventory. They had numbers assigned to them. They didn't have names, families, anything else. They were the property of these United States of America, eventually. Like, what logical rationale would you have to not sign off on this is interesting to me. And then the other countries are very curious to me too, because I'm wondering if they're thinking similarly, where they're not against slavery as the gravest crime against humanity. I wonder if they're weighing their role in it. So the closer they were to maybe the institution of slavery, maybe folks voted yes for this. Folks that feel like they have some distance or guilty by indirect association, we agree that it was a problem, but it wasn't our problem. Like, what does it in fact indicate when you abstain? Now, no is pretty clear to me, but abstaining?
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, when you vote, you can abstain, right? So let's say that I was voting between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, but it was in the United Kingdom and I didn't like either of those people. I could actually, on my ballot, choose abstention. So oftentimes it is I'm abstaining from voting from either of these people because I don't like either of them. So the number of abstention votes you get is a representation of the popularity of the candidates to some degree, right? Like, it shows people who are like...
To some degree, yeah.
So I don't, that's my framework for understanding abstention. Now, if I take that and I apply it here with the UN, it doesn't fly, right? Like...
Well, in my brain...
How can you be undecided about the barbarity of slavery?
Well, and this is probably my very Americanized brain speaking here too, Lisa, probably under Robert's Rules of Order that I'm very familiar with, is that when I hear abstention, let's say I'm in my sorority meeting and we're voting for pink or green, and we vote pink, some of us. Well, even if pink is winning, if somebody abstains, the abstentions go towards the majority. So it would still go towards a vote for pink. And so that's why I'm like, oh, this is very interesting, because as soon as I hear abstention, I hear a vote towards the majority anyway. So not saying it has to be my framework of understanding here, but if it is my framework of understanding, it's saying we're going to hold back so that we're not exactly making a clear statement, but it still supports the cause, the greater cause,
Yeah, yeah.
because the vote would go to the majority. I don't know which way that goes, but to me, I'm like, interesting. But Lisa, we also know how this goes. Whichever way we vote clearly, if it's not an abstention, if it's a vote for or against, that then means that your country, I was going to say countrymen, that's not the right inclusive term, but your country, citizens of your country will then hold you accountable for what that vote is. So
Right.
if you're voting, yes, this was the gravest crime in humanity, which then may indicate some role, then what's going to be the next responsibility?
Yep.
Apologies, reparations, policy changes, all kinds of, in my opinion, good trouble, upheaval in your country in response to, okay, what are you going to do about it? You have made this statement. What are the next steps to live out this statement rather than it just simply being symbolic? That's what critical thinkers that are your citizens will hold you accountable for. And I'm not sure they want to be held accountable, so they just abstained.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I think that's definitely a piece of it because I feel like I also read that one of the points of resistance was people now shouldn't be blamed for the sins of their forefathers and mothers and people, right? Which I just find to be an absolutely ludicrous argument, honestly. But I bet what you're saying is spot on because,
Not systems thinkers, because they're
yeah,
not thinking about how they have
yeah,
chronically benefited from said
exactly.
historical decisions.
Yeah, and also acknowledging that slavery or the transatlantic slave trade is the gravest crime against humanity doesn't make you culpable for it. I can acknowledge that without having like participated in it in a direct way. Obviously, indirectly, I've benefited, like you just said. But it's so weird to me that the language to have down on paper that you're in agreement that this heinous thing is in fact heinous. Like you
Yeah.
can't do that because
Mm-hmm.
of what it might mean and what it might precipitate. And also in this documentary, they talked about reparations because there was the whole big hullabaloo over the Affordable Care Act. There were all these right wing commentators that were riling up the white people around the Affordable
Yeah.
Care Act being reparations. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
absolutely unbelievable.
Well, it's well, and it's kind of, it's something I say all the time, and I think about all the time when it comes to. I might be going into deep waters that I shouldn't go into, Lisa. So you bring me back if I'm going the wrong place here. But no, I'm just thinking about all different forms of abuse where no, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yes,
Right? You see what I'm
yes.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
no, it's not your fault that a spouse, a boyfriend, a parent, whomever was beating your brains out, but now it is your responsibility to work towards healing in the ways that you can based on your resources. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not victim blaming, but at the same time, what do we do next is my question. Like, what do we do next? We can't unsee it. We can't act like it didn't happen. The outcomes, the historical outcomes are there. So given the historical outcomes of an action that we didn't take, we're still the recipient. Shit rolls downhill, girl. That's the visual I keep getting. No, you didn't push the shit down the hill, but here it is. You're buried underneath of it. What are you going to do to get out from under it? Or are you just going to act like it's not there?
Yeah.
And I think we get real comfortable acting like stuff isn't there.
Well, I mean, obviously, we're currently in the midst of erasing slavery from U.S. history,
There
but
you go. Mm-hmm.
I think the better analogy or the more appropriate analogy with the
Yes,
domestic
help me.
violence one is like a friend or a family member who knows the abuse is happening,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
isn't
Mm-hmm.
responsible for the abuse,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't do anything about it, doesn't try to help the person.
There you go. Yes, 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 yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so you're a bystander, and you could. There's many ways you could try and help, right?
Ooh, but make that connection though. You're making a connection here that descendants, I'm trying to get my words together, Lisa, because you're helping me. The descendants of colonialism, colonists particular, are not necessarily innocent bystanders, but they're like, it's the difference between a bystander and an upstander. Which one are you going to be? You're witnessing it, so now what are you going to do about it, rather than let's play the blame game?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to blame today's white person from their great 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 grands doing something to my ancestors, but at the same time you're still benefiting and we're still suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
I
it's,
love
yeah.
where you went with that. Yeah.
It's not like you're not physically watching slavery happen because you're not there, right? Because it happened several years
Mm-hmm.
ago. But
Mm-hmm.
you're benefiting from it. As you said, shit rolls downhill. And, so you have a responsibility. I mean, it feels, I mean, maybe because I didn't grow up here and so I didn't grow up in US white culture, but it
Yeah.
seems very obvious to me. And so I don't, yeah, I find the way that language is used, both in terms of what we talked about in the word of the week, the way it
Mm-hmm.
has been used to kind of congeal this gross mess of white racial fear into a voting bloc, and then the way that it is being refuted in the context of a UN declaration that is long overdue, right? And the United States, I think even if you don't believe it, the United States pre this era would have voted for this, right? Even if
Sure.
their vote didn't match their actions, like, because there's a huge disconnect there. I realize that, but now in some ways it's a truer representation of the United States voting no on this. Don't you think? Actually,
Oh, for sure, for sure. Gosh, I'm gonna have to go back and find that article where it was. It was basically it's an article on Substack, and it was talking about all the frustrations that we are feeling with the rollbacks of everything, DEI and everything under that larger umbrella. And this African American woman was saying, no, I don't want to see any of this stuff roll back. However, at the same time, it is an accurate representation, depiction of what was originally intended by this
yeah,
country.
yeah,
So for everyone that's doing this work, just know that you are intentionally being countercultural and saying that we need to expand the definition of this country, because what we want is greater than even what the founders envisioned. And so we're actually getting an accurate viewpoint of everything. I mean, let's go with the Red Hat Club. They are the accurate depiction of what founders wanted, but this country no longer looks like the founders.
yeah. This is making me think of another piece I just read this morning by Lydia Polgreen. She is a New York
Mm-hmm.
Times opinion columnist, and her piece is
Mm-hmm.
called "It's Not Trump, It's America." And she says,
Okay. Okay.
like a lot of other Americans, I've oscillated in these dark times between two emotional poles. At points, I tell myself that Mr. Orange is a uniquely malevolent figure who has seized levers of power that no previous president has ever dared to grasp. The story doesn't stop state violence in the streets or illegal military operations abroad, yet it has its comforts. Once he passes from the scene, as the laws of nature, if not politics, require, some kind of restoration of the American democratic and constitutional project can take place. On darker days, I find myself turning into a more thoroughgoing narrative that he is the fulfillment of what America has always been, a self-satisfied nation granted license by its myths about providence and exceptionalism to do whatever it wants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And we have talked about exceptionalism how many times now on this
yeah,
podcast, where
a
it's
lot.
just
Yeah.
we'll keep beating that drum, of course, but that hits the nail on the head. Is
Yeah.
that it's something one of my clients said the other week, that said, I did a professional development for them, and they said, oh my God, this is saying what has gone unsaid for 40 years in this organization. And it kind of feels like that, where his election twice
Yep.
is saying what has gone unsaid for decades. So that, no, this is actually who we are. We've talked about that when we saw Biden go up there talking about this is not who we are.
Yeah.
The hell it ain't. It's
Right.
exactly who we are. Some of us are holding out on the potential of what this country could be. But no, that is who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think looking in that mirror, I think unfortunately he is the mirror for this country. So I would agree with that columnist definitely. So with that, here's what I would consider too. Folks, keep watching. Keep watching US, but also keep watching the other countries that abstained or voted no, to see exactly what happens, to see if they further engage with this.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing, I'm looking, Lisa, for other things that will come across symbolically that they will vote in favor of or in support of, and doing a comparative analysis.
Mm-hmm.
If other things come through that say, oh, well, we are voting that we love butterflies and you're okay with that, but you're not okay with condemning slavery as a crime against humanity.
Yes.
I have to do some critical thinking about your country and your perspectives on humanity
Mm-hmm.
across the board.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. Oh, look, here's the thing, Lisa. One day I'm speaking it into existence. One day we're gonna have like a whole seminar class, because by the time we get through a podcast, people have enough reading material for like a month on these topics. I'm telling you, they
Right.
got plenty to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, let's wrap up today's episode of the Unfazed, Unedited podcast. Let me just say it's always interesting when we go into that grab bag, Lisa, because we never know how we're going to come out. So I'm glad you keep doing them. Maybe they're the new one of the new phases. But anyway, that's a wrap for this week. You can certainly reach us on all your social media and your podcast apps at Unfazed Unedited with brackets around the first un. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com, or just go to our website where everything is there at unfazedpodcast.com. So if you like this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So, Dr. Lisa, until next week.
Yeah. See you next week.